What's going on, guys? My name is Jake and welcome back to some more UFC content here on the channel. Today we're going to be doing or looking ahead to UFC Houston, kind of going over my early leans for my predictions for the fights and kind of my early takes on it. Obviously stuff can change as we get closer to fight week because it is unfortunately not this Saturday. They have an off week, but then starting next Saturday, I think there's a good stretch where there's UFC every weekend, or every Saturday, I should say. So I want to put this out again, trying to get some more of this content on the channel, maybe get into the algorithm a little bit more. And yeah, so we're just going to be going over some little fight previews early on. Obviously, we'll do this, and then, like I said, next Thursday or Friday, I'll post my official predictions and bets. Again, not going to go over the whole spiel about the gambling advice thing. Whatever I say, whatever I lean, don't take that as set in stone. Do what you want with your own money. In case you are curious or maybe haven't watched any of my previous videos, I'll give a quick preview of my ROI so far in the year. That's on the first three cards. But again, this isn't going over what I'm betting on. It'll be like what I'm leaning towards, but I won't spend too much time on that. Really just want to talk about the fights and yeah, just kind of dive into them to get some content out since it's off this weekend, and then next week we'll do the usual videos that I did for UFC Vegas 113. So anyway, starting off this card, I'm going to tell you right now, a lot of lines aren't open yet, at least not on the main books that I use. As far as like winning method, point spreads, fight props like rounds and everything like that. But I'm going to tell you right now, this fight for me is, I already know it's going to be one of my bigger plays. Like I said, I kind of broke down a little more in depth in my last video about how I spread my money around and how much I play based on my confidence, where I might have some fights that I might list more bets, but they're a lot lower stakes, just trying to catch some good odds. And then there's going to be other fights where I don't have a ton of different bets on it, but the stakes are going to be higher. This is going to be one where my stakes are going to be higher. Carly Judas and Juliana Miller. I think Carly Judas is going to fuck up Juliana Miller. As long as she can avoid getting taken down by Juliana Miller, which I really don't see happening because Carly Judas is solid in the grappling. She's known as a striker. And I remember when I first heard of her, because she had a fight, I forget who it was against. Let me see. I have Tapology pulled up right now because this is like the one site which actually has the accurate bouts for this card. She fought, I think it was when she fought either Eunice Duben. I might be pronouncing that. I think it was, yeah, because it was last March. Yeah, she was coming into it 3-2, but she was like a minus 500 or 600 favorite in that fight. I'm like, this girl's 3-2, and she is a wide favorite. And then I started watching some of her previous fights, and she lost a split decision to Gabriela Fernandez, who is a really good up-and-coming female fighter. She lost a split decision on the Contender Series. So her only two losses in the UFC are split decisions. And then her two wins are one was a first round KO and the other one was a finish in the third round. So, and then you start to watch a little bit more of her highlights, and this girl is crazy good on the feet. She throws a ton of volume. Again, this is not a channel that gives the technical breakdowns as far as significant strikes and takedown percentages and all that, but she throws or lands, whatever it is, over 10 significant strikes per minute. And Juliana Miller is not a good striker by any means. I have a hard time seeing this fight not ending early via knockout, whether she knocks her out standing and sparks her out cold, or knocks her down and then goes to the ground and pound TKO. Either way, I'm telling you right now, Carly Judas, the value on her money line is not great. As you would suspect, it's like minus 550 to 600, depending on what site you look at. So I'll be interested to see what her KO TKO prop line is going to be. But I'm telling you right now, if we get that, or maybe if you could see Juliana Miller surviving, you could do KO, TKO, or decision double chance. But either way, it'll probably be pretty chalk. It's going to have to be a parlay piece because I'd imagine, again, the odds are going to be pretty wide as far as Juliana Miller not really given much of a chance in this fight. So it'll probably be parlay piece for the most part, but this is definitely, again, as far as confidence on this card, which I think there's, 12 or 13 fights, this might be number one for me. I really don't see, like, even if Juliana Miller gets the takedowns going, I don't think she's going to be able to hold down Carly Judas. She is a tremendous athlete. I think she'll be able to get back up and then start to work on the feet. And yeah, I have a hard time seeing her not getting Juliana Miller out of there early. And even if it doesn't happen early, I think it's just going to wear on Juliana Miller. So yeah, she's definitely going to be a big, cash cow, so to speak, for me. I'm going to be really interested to see what the odds are on her to win by knockout, and what those early round props are going to be. But yeah, I think this one's pretty cut and dry, man. I have a hard time seeing her not dominating this fight. It is women's MMA, and it is the first fight on the card, so you never know. So maybe tread with caution a little bit, especially since the odds are so wide. But yeah, I have a hard time seeing her not absolutely fucking destroying Juliana Miller. No disrespect at all. Both of those girls could kick my ass, but in the case of this fight, I think it's going to be Carly Judas kicking Juliana Miller's ass. Next fight, I don't know if this is the official bout order. This is just the order that Tapology has it. Yair Duval going up against Jordan Levitt. Right now, Duval I saw is like a minus 340 favorite, so pretty wide there. Jordan Levitt is coming down to featherweight from lightweight. Looks can be deceiving. You would never think this guy, who's kind of a goofy looking dude, is 12-3, and I don't know what his UFC record is off the top of my head. 5-2 or something like that. 5-3. So, and he's gotten finishes in the UFC as well. So it looks can be deceiving here, but I think Yair Duval is really good. Now, obviously, we kind of have to tread lightly with this because if you didn't know, if you're new to MMA or, maybe just weren't paying much attention to his last fight or the last card he was on, he fought Isaac Dolgarian. Isaac Dolgarian was a pretty sizable favorite in that fight. And Yair Duval, before the fight started, the odds closed rapidly. Duval ended up submitting him in round one. And then it came out that Isaac Dolgarian basically threw that fight and it was fixed. So now, that wasn't the case on Duval's side. Obviously, he was going in there with the full intention of winning, but Isaac Dolgarian was looking to get some extra money on the side by losing, specifically in the first round. So, obviously, that can probably scare people off from betting on this fight, and I wouldn't blame you at all. As much as I think Duval's going to win, and I think he'll do it pretty convincingly because Jordan Levitt's going to want to get this fight on the mat. Duval's good there, and he's also a lot better on the feet, carries a lot more power. I can understand if people are hesitant, especially to put on, their hard-earned money on this fight. So as far as, I think Duval wins, again, pretty convincingly, pretty confident in that. I think he can finish Jordan Levitt because, again, I think he'll have a big advantage on the feet, and he's also a good enough grappler to hang, if not be better than Levitt in that area. In fact, I think he is better. And I'm not going to let the previous, sketchy-ass fight with Dolgarian, scare me off too much. Yeah, he's going to be my pick. As far as what I'll bet on, probably look to see what his odds to get a finish here are. Might be able to get something good there, but Yeah, I mean, Moneyline minus 340 is not terrible value if you want to use it as a parlay piece, which I think I already have, honestly, and one or two bets. Because again, I think the odds are a little wider than what they should be. I might be, wrong in that sense, but and again, like I said, it's a little sketchy knowing what happened in his last fight. But again, on his side of things, he was going into that, wanting to win just like any other fight. So I don't really knock him too much for what happened in that. Um, so yeah, we'll see. We'll see what the odds come out for him to win by finish. That's probably what I'd lean. But I definitely think even if he doesn't get Jordan Levitt out of there, I think he's just better in all facets and he'll win pretty convincingly. Next fight, I'm going to butcher this pronunciation, but Jean-Paul Labosnoyani making his UFC debut after he got a knockout in the Contender Series. He was originally supposed to fight Austin Vanderford, and now he is fighting Phil Rowe, who Phil Rowe is kind of a UFC vet, always has the reach advantage in his fight, is really big for the division. And I think this is going to be one of the more popular dog picks this week just because Phil Rowe's, he's always kind of in it because there's always that chance he has a strong third round and gets finishes either by knockout. He's not bad on the mat either. But I really like, I'm just going to call him JPL because I don't want to keep saying his name over and over and mispronouncing it. I like JPL in this. He's a really good grappler. I know he got his Contender Series wins by knockout, or his Contender Series win by knockout. But he's more so a grappling base. And I know this might be kind of a strange take because all these like hyped up prospects usually come in undefeated or maybe they've lost once. He's lost twice and they've both been by knockout, or I think one he got knocked out and the other was a doctor stoppage. So that might turn off some people, but I kind of like that knowing that, he's faced adversity. He's been knocked out before. He's been beaten convincingly and he's rebounded from that and gotten better for it. I think a lot of these undefeated fighters, again, this might be a cold take, but maybe they come in with some pressure just to not lose that zero in their loss part of the record. And again, there's obviously jitters and stuff that comes with the UFC debut anyway, and he's certainly not being given a cakewalk here against Phil Rowe, who's always going to be live to, especially later in the fight, because this seemingly always happens with him. He starts super slow, and then he kind of comes back and either finds a finish or whatever. That's what he did against Ange Losa in his last victory. I was actually on him as an underdog in that fight, and that third round was electric, seeing him get that finish. But before that, he was losing, and he was getting taken down by Ange Losa. And in his last fight, he got absolutely worked in the grappling game, albeit by Suk Young Ko, who is a really good prospect, and was actually supposed to be originally on this card. So I don't really fault him too much for that, because, again, I think Suk Young Ko is going to be a problem. But I think if JPL avoids... And here's another thing with Phil Rowe. He always has the reach advantage in all of his fights, and he never uses it. He never uses it. So I think if Labosnoyani, JPL, I think if he can avoid getting clipped and certainly a late surge from Phil Rowe, get his grappling going and secure, some control time and just win the minutes. I have a hard time seeing him finish Phil Rowe because I believe Phil Rowe's never been finished, if I'm not mistaken. Or he has one loss by KO TKO. I don't see JPL finishing him here, but I do see him winning a clear 29-28, if not 30-27. Because, again, there's always that chance that Phil Rowe, if he's losing early on, he could come back and he's going to be live for a knockout late, especially since JPL's been knocked out before. But I think this kid's going to be really good. I believe something I was watching, someone said that his dad was the striking coach for the Gracies, which is a crazy, fact there. But yeah, I'm going to take the guy making his debut I know it's risky. I wouldn't put a ton on this, and I probably won't, because again, he's going up against a veteran who's definitely live for a late surge or a finish. But I do think he wins this pretty convincingly by using the grappling. And, you know, who knows? He's had some big knockouts in his career too. You know, there's always a first time for everything, whether it's submitting someone or, you know, for Phil Rowe's case, the first time getting knocked out in the UFC, I believe. But yeah, I'm going to go with the guy making his debut. Don't really love it, and I don't think he's as good as Suk-Young Ko on the mat, but just seeing how much Phil Rowe got dominated there in his last fight, I see that as a clear path to victory here for JPL. I think he'll win by decision, but again, don't really love it. So probably won't have a ton on that one. Next fight, Ramiz Brahimaj going up against Punahele Soriano. Brahimaj has been an underdog his last 2 fights, and a pretty wide one at that, and has won both of them. I believe this fight opened and he was the underdog once again, but now the public's kind of hammering him, and he's favored at -135. Punahele Soriano, his last fight was, I believe, a win over Nikolai Veretennikov by decision. Yeah, before that he knocked out Uros Medic, who's also on this card. This is a close fight for me, and again, not one that I'm going to have a ton of stakes on, because I'm going to go with Brahimaj because I think he has finishing upside in both, you know, on the feet, but more so with the grappling if he snatches a guillotine, because he's got a pretty nasty one. He put out Austin Vanderford with that. I'm a little wary, though, because like I said, he opened as an underdog, which he had been an underdog his last 2 fights when he won, and now the public's kind of on him. I'm on him as well. I think this will be close. I think Soriano will tire out, and then if you watch when he fought Veretennikov, when he takes down, he leaves his neck wide open to be snatched up. And Veretennikov had multiple attempts at the guillotine in that fight. I just don't think he's nearly as good at it as Ramiz Brahimaj. If Soriano leaves that neck open like he was against Veretennikov, he's getting submitted. And that's why I kind of lean with Brahimaj in this. Again, don't love it. Don't really want to take too long on the breakdown because I haven't seen these guys fight a ton. I just know Brahimaj switched teams, I believe, and he's been kind of on a good run since then, obviously cashing as the underdog in his last 2 fights. I don't know too much about Soriano. I watched his last fight against Veretennikov, and I remember I had that fight to not go the distance, so seeing it go to the scorecards was disappointing. This will be a close one for me, not one that I put a ton of stakes on, but I'm going to roll with Brahimaj to keep the hot streak going. Only this time, not as an underdog. He is the favorite, so we'll see how that plays out. But yeah, I'll go Brahimaj, and we'll see what his odds are for a sub, because I do think if Soriano gets the takedowns and leaves his neck open, he's going to get snatched up pretty quickly. I do like either fighter. However, Soriano is more likely to knock out Brahimaj, and Brahimaj is more likely to submit Soriano, in my opinion. So I'll be interested to see what the odds are for this fight to not go the distance, because that could be a good play there. For a fight where I'm not confident on either fighter, you know, I'm obviously leaning one side with Brahimaj, but I do think it will end inside the distance. But we'll have to see the odds on that. Next fight, Nora Cornell and Jocelyn Edwards 2. This is a rematch. Jocelyn Edwards it was 2022. She fought Nora Cornell in France, and anyone who's talked about this fight, anyone picking it, will tell you that Nora Cornell did not win that fight, and that the home French judges probably gave her that one. Whatever you think about that, there's no denying this, and that Jocelyn Edwards and Nora Cornell have shown significant differences in how much better each respective woman has gotten in their UFC career. Nora Cornell got absolutely battered and dominated by Carol Rosa in her last fight. I mean, she got 10-8 in that fight. Shows she's not very great on the ground. She's more of a striker, and that's her best path to victory. But Jocelyn Edwards, in her last 3 fights, she submits Tamiris Vidal, she knocks out Chelsea Chandler, and then she knocks out Zombie Girl. So 3 straight finishes. She did lose a decision to Eileen Perez, which again, not really no sweat off her back. Perez is pretty good. And I just think she's going to be able to take down Cornell. And I like her to get a submission here. Or if it's, ground and pound, that could be a path to victory as well. But I really favor her to get the grappling going. And just based off their first fight where she got robbed, she probably does not want to go to the judges' scorecards again. I know it's not in France, it's in Houston, Texas, but I think she's going to be actively looking for a finish. She's on a 3-finish streak. I think she makes that 4. I'm going to say she submits her. And if I had to pick a round, I'm going to say round 2. So definitely Jocelyn Edwards, her money line's minus 310. I think that's solid value if you want to use it as a 2-leg parlay piece, because that covers either ground and pound TKO, or she could spark her. That's always a chance. Sub, which I think is her best path to victory, or just a dominant decision. So her money line parlay piece is definitely not bad. But, again, we'll see what the odds open up with. I like her by sub. We'll see what the odds are there, or her to win by finish on a double chance. But as far as confidence on this fight, I'm actually really confident in Jocelyn Edwards. I think she's surging. She's one of my, more favorite female fighters because, again, she actually chases the finish. And I think she gets another one here and a little revenge spot on Nora Cornell. Next fight, Alden Correa and Luis Garul. Alden Correa, minus 280 favorite. And his last fight, he fought Alejandro Costa, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, and I think he took that on short notice because, yes, it was his UFC debut. And he absolutely dominated Alejandro Costa, or Alessandro, however the fuck you pronounce it, as a massive underdog. Nobody was giving him a shot in that fight, and he came in and dominated. And now he's a big favorite against Luis Garul, who, ever since he's been in the UFC, he's not won yet. He's 0-2. He got finished by Ode Osborne, which, as your UFC debut, that's a pretty tough fight. Osborne's also on this fight. There's a lot of fighters who have fought each other before that are on this card together. And then he lost a decision to Jesus Aguilar. I do think the odds are a little bit wide, and there's some recency bias here. But I think Alden Correa, he beat Costa in his last fight. I think he's going to have a significant striking advantage here. He trains with Joshua Van, the champion in the same weight class, and they're based in Texas, so this is kind of a home fight for him. And I think he's going to be riding that momentum from his debut. I'm thinking he finds another knockout to make it back-to-back. Garul, I'm confident, but not as confident as I am in, say, Jocelyn Edwards or Carly Judice or another fight that we'll get to later, because I thought Garul would do a lot more in the UFC, and I feel like he's kind of due for a good performance. But at the same time, I don't want to give that too much thought, saying someone's due, even though that was one of my bigger motivations for taking Ketlin Souza last week, and it worked out. But I just think Correa is really good. I think he's going to have the big striking advantage here. I think the odds are a little wide, so tread with caution. I think it's some recency bias from the books, but I would maybe say Correa is more like minus 200, minus 225. Either way, I think using his money line as a parlay piece is definitely not a bad move, because he could knock him out, can maybe find a submission. He's won 9 of his 11 fights by finish, so we'll see what the odds are on him to win by finish, and then obviously what the TKO props are. But I'm going to go with Alden Correa as the early pick, and I'd like to say he gets it done by knockout. Next fight, Ode Osborne versus Alibi Ediris, who his last fight was the Ultimate Fighter finale, where he got submitted, I believe, by Joseph Morales. Yeah. submitted in round 2, and he was a massive favorite in that fight. If I'm not mistaken, he was like minus 500 or something along those lines against Joseph Morales, who now he most recently submitted Matt Schnell, showing that those odds should have been a lot closer, if not having Morales favored. That was Adiris' first professional loss, and now he's making his official UFC debut against Ode Osborne. And I'm going to tell you right now, this might be another one that ages like milk, but I think I like Ode Osborne to take a dog shot here and not only beat Alibi Adiris, but I think he can knock him out. This is going to be one where I'm not going to have a lot of stakes on it because Ode Osborne, I mean, at the end of the day, he has lost 4 of his last 5. He's 5-7 in the UFC, but he just provides such a finishing upside. You know, of his 13 wins, 5 of them by knockout, 5 are by submission. So, again, the finishing upside is there. He knocked out Luis Garul, who we just talked about. He's beaten Charles Johnson in a split decision. And then he's fought Steve Erceg, who once fought for a title. So, again, just like the level of competition has been there. I mean, who knows how well that loss to Joseph Morales will age for Alibi Adiris. But I don't know. I just think the odds, I got him at plus 134. That's something I already bet on. I'm willing to take a dog shot here on Ode Osborne, but I will say this. I think if he doesn't get Adiris out of there early by like round 1 or, you know, middle of round 2, I could definitely see Adiris starting to come back and maybe, you know, put a hurting on Ode Osborne. At the end of the day, betting on a guy who's 5-7 in the UFC is not exactly something I would do a whole lot, but I just think he's got the finishing upside, especially early, and he's been in there with some pretty good UFC comp, and he's always kind of live. He's an underdog a lot, and he's always kind of live. He's going to fight for your money, and I just don't think it's a hateful play to take Ode Osborne on a dog shot here. So don't love it, not super confident in it, but I'm just not really willing to put my money and make a pick on a guy who lost on the Ultimate Fighter as like a minus 500 favorite, and now he's making his debut against a guy who has been in the UFC for a while, has fought some much better competition, and again, it's just live for a finish. So, again, could be a take that ages really badly, and there's always that chance that if he doesn't get finished early, he could find a finish later on in the fight over Ode Osborne. It's certainly in the cards, but I'm going to take a dog shot on Ode Osborne to beat Alibi Adiris as an underdog. Next fight, Chidi Njokuani versus Carlos Leal. I'm going to make this one pretty quick. I'm going with Carlos Leal, and I think he knocks out Chidi Njokuani in the first round, but I'm not going to have a lot of money on it. What I am going to have more money on, and what I think is going to be, you know, a very popular pick in this fight is probably under 1.5 round, or just simply the fight to end by KO TKO. Leal is a marauder. He's going to walk people down. He's going to put pressure on them, and that has benefited him for most of his career, but in his most recent fight, it was a destruction to him because he lost in, 43 seconds to 42-year-old Muslim Salikov. Not a good look, but Chidi Njokuani's also had his fair share of stinkers, and you know, he's definitely a much more technical striker. And if he's able to keep this on the outside, you know, he could definitely catch Carlos Leal, especially if he's walking in the same way he did against Salikov. He could catch him with something. And it's always a little bit concerning taking a guy coming off. That was the first time Leal's either been finished or knocked out in his professional career, and he's had a lot of fights. First time ever been knocked out. He has been subbed once, but most of his losses before that had come by decision. So it's kind of interesting, you know, seeing how a guy will come back from that. But again, I'm going to go Leal by knockout, probably in the first or early second round. Don't really love it. And I've also seen that the odds have, I think he opened as like minus 196. I think that's shortened down to like minus 142. So there's a lot of money coming in on Njokuani. Take that with what, however you will. What I do really like in this fight is it to end by KO, TKO, or under 1.5 rounds, which I'm sure the line prop or the round prop is going to be. We'll see what the odds are on that. Might have to use this as a parlay piece, but I'm going to go Leal to rebound. Maybe be a little bit more, calculated in walking down a guy like Njokuani. But I think if he catches him, he's going to put his lights out, and it's going to be pretty quick. So, I'm going to go Carlos Leal for the early pick. But again, don't really love it. Next fight, Zach Reese against Michel Pereira. Zach Reese, a plus 122 underdog. Michel Pereira, a slight favorite. I'm telling you right now, if this fight was 2 or 3 years ago, Michel Pereira would probably be like a minus 600, 700 favorite. But we've seen from Michel Pereira lately that it seems like the loss to Anthony Hernandez after he was on this hot streak, making these flashy finishes and having this wild fight style, that seemingly took the soul right out of him because he has looked dog shit since then. He did absolutely nothing against Abus Magomedov, and then he got finished in 43 seconds by the Darce Knight, Kyle Dawkins. With that being said, he's fighting Zach Reese, who is the younger guy, certainly has finishing upside, but has not exactly fought the best competition in the UFC. He got dominated by Azamat Bakoyev, beat Dusko Todorovic, no contest against Cedric Dumas because he kicked him in the nuts, and then he beat Jackson McVeigh via rear naked choke in the second round after McVeigh probably won the first round. But I say that, and I'm still going to take a dog shot on Zach Reese because I think Michel Pereira is completely out of it. He just looked like absolute dog shit in his last 3 fights, and it's hard for me to back a guy. I mean, I can't believe I'm backing Zach Reese as an underdog in the first place, but I also equally can't back Michel Pereira. So honestly, my only 2 bets for this fight are probably going to be a Zach Reese money line or a fight to not go the distance parlay piece, because Zach Reese can certainly knock out Michel Pereira, and equally Michel Pereira could easily knock out Zach Reese. But I'm just going to go with the younger guy whose trajectory seems to be much more positive than that of Michel Pereira. I'm not going to get really technical with the breakdown here, just kind of going with my gut. I like a dog shot here for, Zach Reese. He's also younger, and it's kind of his time to go now at 31. You kind of have to start surging the UFC if you really want to make any headway in the promotion. And he did respond to some adversity against Jackson McVeigh. And again, you're going on a guy who's got 2 straight wins, is on an upward trajectory, younger, maybe a little bit hungrier against a guy who seemingly has lost his soul in fighting and has looked like absolute shit in his last 2 fights. So I wouldn't put a whole lot of stakes on this if you are betting on it. For me, I'll do a little sprinkle on Zach Reese to win, and we'll see what the odds are on on this fight to not go the distance. But yeah, not going to be a ton of investment from myself there. Next fight, Sergey Spivak going up against Ante Delija. Ante Delija is the favorite at minus 174, and I think that's warranted. I really see this fight going one of 2 ways. Delia's either going to knock out Spivak early, or Spivak's going to get the takedowns going and probably submits Delija, or maybe just wet blankets him. I'm going to go Delija, though. It's heavyweight in the UFC, which right now is pretty shit, so I don't want to take too long on it. But, this guy trains with Tom Aspinall. He knocked out Marcin Tybura in his debut, and then thought he knocked out Waldo Cortez Acosta, and then ended up getting knocked out after the fight continued. That was a weird-ass situation. Looked like he had knocked out Waldo, then it looked like it might be a no contest, and then the fight continues, and Waldo knocks him out. So, weird fight. They both have fought Waldo, so they have a common opponent. Spivak definitely gave Waldo I don't even say he gave him a better fight because it looked like D'Elia knocked out Waldo Cortez Acosta. But at the end of the day, I just think he's going to have such a striking advantage. And I think he's going to put it on Spivak early. If Spivak survives, again, I definitely could see him getting the takedowns going and maybe finding a submission. Or, maybe even ground and pound. Who knows? But again, this will be another fight I don't have a ton of investment on just because it's heavyweight in the UFC. And it's both guys coming off losses. Yeah, I like D'Elia to win this by knockout. Probably, I think if it happens, it's going to be in the first round, maybe early second. But if he doesn't get it there, definitely Spivak's live as an underdog. But yeah, I think he's just going to have such the advantage on the feet. And Spivak just has not looked good in his most recent performances. The canceled bout against Shamil Gaziev. He got knocked out by Jalton Almeida. That kind of tells you what you need to know there. So, I'm going to go Ante D'Elia by knockout in this. We'll see what the odds are when they come out. Don't love it, so won't have a ton on that. Next fight, I think this is going to be a banger. Danny Ige versus Melky Costa. Melky Costa, I'm going to say it right now. I already used him as a parlay piece at minus 250. And again, talking about trajectories, this is a more, I think safer pick as opposed to Zach Reese versus Michel Pereira. We got Dan Ige, who everyone loves. He's a fun fighter. I mean, he took the fight against Diego Lopez on 45 seconds notice and then went out there and knocked out Sean Woodson. I think everyone was on him, including myself. Obviously not probably. It was a bad choice against Patricio Pitbull and got absolutely dominated. So I like Melky Costa in this fight because, again, I think the trajectories are going opposite directions. Ige, he's a good gatekeeper, but he's clearly never going to be a serious contender in the UFC. Whereas Melky Costa, man, he was like the fighter of the year last year. I think he won 4 times in 2025, if I'm not mistaken. He won 4 fights in 2025. 2 of them by finish. He knocked out Morgan Charrier the first time he had ever been knocked out. He choked out Andre Fili, and then he won a decision against C-Rod, Christian Rodriguez, who a lot of people had Rodriguez in that fight because he's kind of the prospect killer. And Melky Costa beat him unanimously, and then he had a unanimous decision against Julian Erosa. So this kid is hot. He's on a 5-fight win streak. Obviously, those 4 fights I just mentioned. And then he beat, I'm going to butcher this pronunciation, Shayilan Nurendembieke. I know that was wrong, but 5-fight win streak. Before that, he got TKO'd by Steve Garcia. No sweat off your back there because Garcia is one of the best in that division currently in the UFC. I have a hard time seeing Melky Costa finishing Dan Ige because Dan Ige has never been finished. Yeah, never been finished. All of his losses are by decision, and he's going to make it a scrap. He's going to be tough to get out of there, but he is just not a minute winner. He relies a lot more on the big flash finishes, and I have a hard time seeing him finishing Melky Costa. Again, even though it's happened before, and who knows, this is the biggest fight of Costa's career, so maybe there's a little bit of nerves, but I think he wins this 29-28 pretty unanimously, if not 30-27. I just favor the younger, much hotter fighter, and I'm not talking about looks, okay? Hotter in terms of his UFC career right now. I just think he's going to keep surging. Is he ever going to be a title contender? I don't know. Probably not, in my opinion. But I think he could be a top 10 guy. And yeah, he was so active last year and won either by finish or convincingly of all of his fights. I think his confidence has to be an all-time high. And yeah, this is a huge fight for him. I'm going to take him by decision or a parlay piece. There's a first time for everything. Danny Ige's never been finished, but you never know. Maybe Morgan Charrier had never been knocked out, and Costa did that in the first round with a head kick. So if you want to take his money line as a parlay piece, I think because, again, Danny Ige is just not a minute winner. I think he's a popular fighter. The fans love him, especially since he saved, an event recently in his career when he fought Diego Lopez and gave him a good fight. But I just think Costa is going to be able to pick him apart, definitely win the minutes, and get a pretty convincing decision win here. So that's what I'm going to go with for that fight. Next up, the co-main event, Jeff Neal and Uros Medic. I'm telling you right now, I'm going with hands of steel by first round knockout. Uros Medic, I saw this, somebody say this. He's basically like Terrence McKinney if Terrence McKinney was a bald white guy at welterweight. He's going to come out guns blazing. I think all of his last 3 or 4 fights have ended in the first round by knockout. Let's see. He most recently knocked out Salikov, who was the guy who knocked out Leal. Knocked him out in the first round, 1 minute. Knocked out Gilbert Urbina in the first minute. Got knocked out in 30 seconds by Punahele Soriano. Knocked out Tim Means in the first round. And then got submitted by Miktabek Oralbai in the second round, the fight before that, back in 2023. So I'm telling you right now, the under 1.5 is probably going to be pretty chalk in this fight. But let me tell you why I favor Jeff Neal, because I'm going to list off Jeff Neal's most recent performances and also something that I heard recently as far as him personally. We'll go last 5 opponents. Carlos Praches, who knocked him out with that spinning back elbow. That would have knocked out anyone on the planet in that weight class. Rafael Dos Anjos, Ian Gary, Shavkat Rakhmonov, Vicente Luque, Santiago Ponzinibbio. Before that, we can go back even further, Neil Magny and Stephen Thompson. Can you tell me that Uros Medic is on the level of any of those guys? At least at the time that Jeff Neal fought him. I mean, Neal has been in there with Prates, who's probably going to be fighting for a title within his next 2 fights. Same thing with Ian Machado Gary. Yes, it was an old Rafael Dos Anjos, but still, that's a legend. Rakhmonov's one of the best fighters in the world. Vicente Luque, at least at that point, was the number 6 welterweight. So, I mean, there you go. That's a top 10 guy that he fought and beat. Unless I'm reading that incorrectly. I'm not reading that incorrectly. No, yeah. Number 6 welterweight, Vicente Luque. I never know he got that high. Then, yeah, Neil Magny and Stephen Thompson, Wonderboy, who's fought for titles before. So, I recently saw that he said that he was battling alcohol addiction for, years while he was fighting. So, he was going into some of those fights that we just listed battling an alcohol addiction. And he's supposedly sober now. Hopefully that's the case, and hopefully he sticks to it just for life in general, not even with fighting. I just think this is a huge step down in competition for Neal, going from Prates to Uros Medic. And I think is a massive step up in competition for Medic, going from Muslim Salikov, and even before that, Gilbert Urbina, who rocked him. Urbina on Tapology is the number 71 ranked welterweight. 71. I didn't even know there were 71 people at welterweight in the UFC. And now he's fighting number 13, Jeff Neal. I just think this is way too much. Jeff Neal's been in there with some absolute killers. And yes, I know he got knocked out brutally in his last fight. But I just favor him so much in this. I think Medic is probably going to storm in there like he always does, and Jeff Neal's going to catch him, and this fight's going to end quickly. If you don't agree with me and you're, siding on, again, the white, bald, welterweight Terrence McKinney, I kind of get it because, again, Neal got finished badly in his last fight, and, Uros Medic, maybe you could say kind of what I've said about some of these other fights. He's kind of on an upward trend, and Jeff Neal's on a downward trend. But every time Uros Medic has taken a step up in competition, like when he beat Matthew Semmelsberger, he fought Miktabek Oralbai, got dominated. Beat Tim Means, give him Punahele Soriano, got knocked out in 30 seconds. His last 2 fights, Gilbert Urbina, then he got a step up against Salikov, who's fucking 50 years old, and he beat him. So maybe you could say he's on an upward trajectory, but I just think this is way too much of a step up. Jeff Neal, again, he's been in there with some absolute killers, and he's beating some of the best in the world. At one point, he was one of the top prospects at welterweight and wasn't far off from a title shot. And now he's yeah, he's fighting a guy whose best UFC win is Muslim Salikov. Yeah, I'm going Jeff Neal all the way here. He's going to be one of my more confident picks. Certainly volatile because there's obviously finishing upside on both ends early, but I have a hard time seeing Medic getting this done. And I'm going to roll with Jeff Neal, Hands of Steel, to get a first round knockout. But his money line straight up minus 120, 196. Maybe you could sprinkle that with a parlay piece. Certainly would not be hateful there. Last fight, the main event. Sean Strickland going up against Fluffy Hernandez, who, give or take on each book, is about a minus 270 favorite. And I'm all on Fluffy Hernandez here. I think this guy is the biggest threat to Khamzat Chimaev, if he even ever gets to face Chimaev. If Chimaev doesn't, assuming he fights Nasruddin Imavov, probably dominates him, and then maybe moves to light heavyweight. So if he would ever even fight Chimaev, I think this is the guy that would give him the best fight. Not saying he would beat him, probably doesn't. In fact, most likely doesn't beat Chimaev, because I don't know if anyone can beat him. But Hernandez, he weaponizes his cardio at these heavier weights like no one else in the UFC. And I think he is just going to wear on Sean Strickland, who, the big reason I'm really favoring Hernandez in this spot is because there's just no finishing upside to me for Sean Strickland. I mean, he's been the same type of fighter for the longest time now. And yes, it worked out. He beat Israel Adesanya. But that's just like a perfect matchup for him because you know, well, not a perfect matchup, but a much better matchup for him because you know Adesanya is not going to look to grapple. He's going to look to strike. So Strickland can make it dirty with the little teeps to the body and the jab combo that people make fun of him for. It is effective, I'll give him that. But I just think Hernandez is going to be able to wear on him with relentless pressure. I mean, this guy's like Marab level cardio, but at middleweight, which is insane. And he's going to keep looking for sub attempts. Does he get a sub? I don't know. I've already bet on Fluffy by decision at plus 150, and I bet on his spread as well, minus 5.5 at minus 140. I'll give Strickland some credit. I mean, he's fought the best of the best in this division. He's been a champion. He hasn't looked that great in his most recent performances, but, you know, still, he's one of the best in the world. So I have a hard time seeing Fluffy. Well, I don't have a hard time seeing Fluffy finishing him, but I'll kind of give him some credit where credit is due. I think more often than not, Fluffy does win by decision. And if it does, I think he's just going to outwork and just wear on Sean Strickland, who I could see him just being exhausted by the 4th and 5th round, and maybe Fluffy does find a late sub. And if he gets this win the way I think he does, he's probably next in line after Imavov gets wiped. That is, if Chimaev doesn't move up to light heavyweight. So yeah, Fluffy's going to be one of my more confident picks on this. His money line, decent parlay piece value there if you want to go with it at minus 270. But like I said, by decisions plus money, the spread. The normal spread is minus 9.5. I took an alt spread at minus 5.5 at minus 140. Pretty good value there. I know his double chance by sub or decision was minus 225. So yeah, a couple different ways you can go there, but I don't want to go outright and say he dominates Sean Strickland, but I think he wins pretty convincingly. Even if he doesn't find a finish, I think we're seeing 49-46. Maybe 48-47, but it could also, if he gets the wrestling going and just wears on him, we could see 50-45s too. But again, I kind of want to give some credit to Sean Strickland because he is still one of the best there is at middleweight, and he's been in there with some absolute killers, and he's been a champion. So obviously don't write a guy like that off, but I think Fluffy wins this, again, pretty convincingly. So yeah, that'll do it for, you know, the early look ahead to UFC Houston, which is, again, unfortunately next Saturday. Not this Saturday, but I'll put this out, and then, you know, next week we'll do the more definitive picks and exactly what I bet on, just like we did for UFC Vegas 113. We'll see how that goes, and then over the weekend after, you know, or the Monday or Tuesday following UFC Houston, we'll put out the recap. All right, had to make a cut and re-record the ending of this because my camera died, which tells me I was rambling and yapping way too much. But anyway, thankfully we didn't lose any of the original recording, and I just have to record this last like 30 seconds to yeah, send it off. But anyway, like I said, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Love putting out this content. We'll keep it going. Next week we'll do the official predictions and bets just like we did for UFC Vegas 113. I'll probably be coming on Thursday night or Friday before the fights, and we'll do a recap after that. So again, thank you guys so much. I'll see you guys next time.